2018 Integral Women in Leadership Program Keynote address. It's a very exciting one for me because it features two of my very dearest friends and their stories. I think I've heard some of them, but not all of the stories. In introducing this, I just wanted to give you just a little idea, I guess, about the IWIL program and what it is and what it does. I was trawling through quotes on the internet, which is one of those things you do when you don't really want to write a speech, but you know that you have to. But I came across one that I thought really summarised what the program is about. And it comes from Golda Meir, the former Israeli Prime Minister, and she says, "Make the most of yourself by fanning the tiny inner sparks of possibility into flames of achievement." And I thought about the women who've done this program, and I thought, yeah, that's what happened. That's what I saw happen. That we had these little ideas, these things that we thought maybe that would be possible, and they became flames of achievement. They became reality in women's lives. So, Integral Women in Leadership Program, or IWIL, as it was coined by Ron Cassiope, our chairman, when it was first launched. And I love it because we do finish with saying, I will go out there and do some new things. Was born in 2014. Seems like quite a long time ago. It was born out of my own personal experiences as a woman in the mining industry and as an executive who discovered some things about my own leadership and my own position that really I contributed to as much as the organisation I worked for. And thought this needs to stop because I saw the statistics as well, and we started to see reports coming out that really said, particularly in Western Australia, we are well behind, and we still are, sadly. Every year I go to update the presentations thinking, this is good, maybe it's moved a little. No, it hasn't. So I also read Lean In about that time and thought, hang on a minute, this isn't just me. This woman wrote a book and it exactly says all of these experiences that I've had. And I thought, we've got to do something about this. We've run the program, this will be the 10th time, 9 public programs, 1 in-house program. And what I now know from having run the program this many times is there is a magic in having time and space for reflection. If you think about it, when was the last time you gave yourself time and space to just reflect? Feedback and getting other people's perspectives is gold. It is so amazing how reframing your own challenges and seeing them through someone else's eyes can have an impact. Having a clear vision and a set of guiding values makes everything in life easier, particularly making decisions. And finally, nothing is impossible if you have a network of supportive women around you who believe in you and believe in your dreams. On that note, perfect segue to introduce Megan and Anna. So Anna and Megan and I, to begin with, I just have to disclose, we have a really unhealthy fascination with Annabelle Crowd and Lee Sales. So if there's anything out there, we're all in the same cult, right? Totally. These two women are women I've admired for quite a long, as long as I've known them, which they've known each other way longer than they've known me. That sounds terrible, like way. Anyway, they're going to talk about that. But as real shining lights in their industries, and particularly in these male-dominated industries where it takes a certain, commitment, dedication, and also vision for women to succeed as these two have. Anna is an experienced operational leader. I think she's all sorts of leaders, but operational is one of them. And I've seen her absolutely shine, particularly in her board roles that she holds with Kimberley Ports Authority, Brightwater Care, and she was also past chair of the board at Spare Parts Puppet Theatre. And I certainly saw with that organisation, I'm a Freo person, that she took it to a new level of profile. We were very proud when Anna was a finalist in the Telstra Women's Awards in 2017, and she was also a 40 under 40 winner in...
Pretty much just before that.
Skip the dates.
Yeah. You don't need to mention it.
And she has 2 amazing children, and it's the first day in the week this week she hasn't been wearing a fascinator, I think, so that's good.
And then the day's not over yet.
So she's literally just stepped off the plane from Melbourne. I'm going to skip the dates, no, I won't really. But Megan has a number of significant years' experience in industrial and operating businesses. When I first met Megan, she was heading up the, wow, that's a lot of portfolios, operational, people, safety, environment, corporate affairs, human resources and training. You seem to be doing an awful lot of Brookfield Rail when I first met you. Megan's recently established Pleiades Global, which has an amazing reach into helping people through coaching and building businesses to be high trust and inclusive. But Megan has been amazing in campaigning for gender equality, and as chair of the National Association of Women in Operations, which will from here on be abbreviated as NAWO because that's a mouthful, she's doing things at the national level to really represent women in operational businesses. That's enough of me talking. These guys are going to do some talking. Think about questions, because at the end it would be really great if we can have a kind of a big
And there's no taboo questions.
That's
anything.
right.
Anything you want to ask.
And we've timed this thing expecting you to ask questions.
Yeah, you're timed it expecting
All right,
questions.
get on here early.
Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Hannah. And it's absolutely a thrill for Megan and I to be here supporting a fantastic program and speaking with all of you. And we said there were going to be questions, and tonight I might actually start with one. Have any of you ever found yourself in a place where your career has slipped into neutral? You started out, you were firing on all cylinders, and then all of a sudden something happened. You look around and you're like, how did I get here? I hit that point in 2002. I was sitting on the floor in my apartment in Melbourne, staring at the carpet. The phone sat on the ground next to me, taunting me, ready to call. I dreaded picking up that phone. I could feel the tightness in my chest and the anxiety of having to speak to someone when they answered. But I needed to do something. I needed to call because I needed a lifeline. I'd moved to Melbourne from Perth about a year before to start a new job. It was supposed to be a change for the better and a bit of an adventure. New city, new opportunities. Only not too long after I got there, I realised I was in what could only be described as a dead-end job. I had one genuine connection in the city. We'd worked together when I was just starting out, and she was a rock star. She was also up to her eyeballs in a new baby and didn't necessarily have time for my career demands. So, of course, her advice was to reach out to somebody else we both knew. Although clearly she'd kept in touch better than I had. For me, that was even more of a tenuous connection, an even more senior leader, an executive in one of Australia's greatest icons, and yet another overachiever that I was going to need to call out of the blue when I needed something. The fear of polite dismissal was actually worse than the thought of a full rebuttal. I didn't even know if she thought I was any good when we worked together. Reaching out is hard. This was a moment of choice. Pick up the phone, choose to reconnect, and be ready to ask for help. There were no guarantees. She may indeed have forgotten me, or worse, she might have remembered me unfondly. But she took the call, she was happy to speak, and she had some ideas about a possible opportunity. In truth, that call utterly reshaped my career. More importantly, I learned that the choice to reach out, to reconnect, was worth that sick feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Hi everyone. Who here has ever been in a situation where they've had to reach out and make a call and they feel really sick about it? Anyone? Yeah, okay. The rest of you are extroverts, it's awesome. But for those of you that are like me, the thing is that sometimes other people make it look a lot easier, right? And the truth is it's not easy for any of us to do that. And we're given a lot of advice because the right thing to do is have workplace connections because they will help your career. But a lot of the advice seems hard to follow because we're told that we need to go to networking events, we need to have pithy conversation ready to go, we collect those business cards and then we go back to our desk and we put them into our computer and then we diarise them and call people every 2 to 3 months, right? And I know someone who loves that approach. He always has someone to call and he does it in between meetings. In between meetings, he'll call someone. Frankly, I find that exhausting, right? And if you find that exhausting, then Anna and I are going to talk to you about another option. And unless you are feeling hashtag organised, hashtag confident and hashtag blessed, this might be the option for you. Okay. This graph. We women start out, can you see it from back there?
Look
So
at the
women
lines.
starting out
Yeah.
at 12. Red line, women, black line, men. Okay? Women start out statistically really well in the workplace. And then we fall behind. And the reasons for that are complex and varied. And Anna and I are not going to try and solve all those problems here today or provide all the solutions. And I really want to acknowledge that in part, the system that we find ourselves working in can feel really stacked against us. And we're working hard to shift that system to one that's far more inclusive. But the reality is, while that system shifts, we need to navigate it. And even when that system does shift to be one that's far more inclusive, the reality is that connection formed at work or work-based connections will still be critical to our careers. The data shows that women make fewer work-based connections than men, right? And fewer workplace connections means less support, and less support means that we feel less optimistic about our chances of progression. So if I turn that around, workplace connections mean more support and it'll mean we'll feel more optimistic about our chances of progression. Earlier this year I read an article that really resonated with me. And it proposed that we needed 2 types of support in the workplace. The first one is called instrumental support, okay? That's what we're used to talking about when we talk about get out there and network and make connections, right? It's mentoring, it's professional development, and it's sponsorship. What Anna and I would like to talk to you here today about, though, is the second kind of support. And that's psychosocial support. Okay? So psychosocial support is where you build connections with someone or some people who have some similarity with you enough that they can understand what you're going through. That you build that connection over time so that person or those people see you through multiple career phases and understand what you've been through. And really importantly, that that person is a psychologically safe space to go to when you've got something to talk to them about, right? The thing is, I've learned that that person is unlikely to be your partner, it's unlikely to be your mum, and it's unlikely to be your best friend, okay? They will tell you when your bum looks too big in your jeans, but they are less likely to be able to talk to you about career-related matters. The really good news is that the data also shows that the best connections that you have are the ones that you form, the ones you already have, and the ones you form in high-stakes environments. So a high-stake environment is one where you've been able to expose yourself, your talent, to someone else. Okay, so they've had an opportunity to have a look at you and decide whether or not they want to support you. At work, a high-stake environment may be volunteering for a project team, it may be working on a board, and outside of work, high-stakes environments look like sporting teams, they look like something that you volunteer for outside of work, right? Anna and I are going to talk about a high-stake environment. We met in a high-stakes environment 25 years ago.
No, it's not. She keeps rounding that up, and I find it offensive. I like to say over 20 years ago. Just to be clear. But indeed, to explore the high-stakes environment that we first met, we do need to go back to the beginning. And that takes us back to me at university, and ready yourselves for this. Picture me as a somewhat unremarkable student. I know that's going to be hard, but just, okay. So I was indeed an unremarkable student at uni who happened to have a dad who worked in the mining industry. And thanks to that link, I got vacation work in a think tank at Hammersley Island. Some of you will know that as Rio Tinto Iron Ore today. A think tank. Nothing to be concerned about that. I joined a team of people who worked in a windowless room on St George's Terrace and were, quite honestly, disrupting the mining industry. I didn't know a great deal about what they were doing, but I knew enough to know that I must have been there due to either a wild fluke or a terrible mistake. But what I also knew was I was going to try my arse off to do a good job. Megan sat on the next desk. She was clearly deserving of her space in the think tank. She was scary, smart, and totally out of my league. We sat in adjacent desks and really only spoke occasionally. Usually those stories pretty much reinforced my feelings of inadequacy, and I can't actually think of a single time that we even ate lunch together that summer. As far as I was concerned, she was the cool kid, and I was on the outside looking in. At the end of that summer, I went back to uni, and that could easily have been it for us. But fate played a role with a buoyant economy and a graduate placement program at Hammersley Island. For me, the grad role was an opportunity to reconnect. I made a point to reach out to the few people I knew in the organisation who'd been on the think tank and touch base with Megan, and she was happy to chat. In fact, not long after, she asked for me to be placed on a project she was working on. We took a road trip across the Pilbara, two women in their khaki shorts and short sleeves at that point in time. We were meeting with managers across the operations. We worked hard and we had fun, and I was able to see how well regarded she was in the business. We also had time on those long drives and the occasional Cessna caravan, sorry Megan, to actually share a little bit about ourselves and start to connect at a bit more of a deeper level. Then we came back to Perth, delivered our project, and Megan scored a promotion. She was moving to Melbourne. But before she left, she set up a meeting for me with another manager called Shane Hughes. He was yet another Hammersley rock star. And it turned out that Shane was actually Megan's farewell gift to me. She knew from our travels together that I was feeling a bit rudderless in my grad placement. And without me knowing, she played a role to find me a better leader. Now I was in with the cool game. Looking back though, ours was a pretty unobvious connection to foster, right? The scary woman in the desk next door, Not someone that I had immediate chemistry with upon meeting. But there must have been something. I wanted to impress her. I wanted to reach out. I kept coming back. I guess fan that fire. And for me, when I think about connection, it's rarely one big thing. You know, you're not getting struck by lightning when you see your mentor across the room, right? But something that brings you together, and then lots of little actions that are built over time. Because the connection that we have today, those 20 plus years, was absolutely a slow burn.
It's true. And I would actually say that slow burn is an understatement. Because that was 1995. Now I'm going to bring you into 2012. Lots of things had happened between those years. So Anna had got married, we both had kids, we had multiple interstate moves and a lot of job changes in that time. And in 2012, it had been 10 years since I last worked with Anna in any capacity. And in 2012, I moved from Sydney back to Perth. And I landed in Perth on a really hot January day in 2012 with two very reluctant teenagers. And I was not looking forward to facing life then without Sunday trading. It had been my 8th move in our marriage. And when I started work 5 days later, I realised there were conversations that I could easily have in my work in Sydney that I just couldn't have at my new workplace here in Perth. It felt like I had hit a wall of cultural sludge. Now, I love it here now, okay? 7 years, I absolutely love it here now, but then it felt like a wall of cultural sludge. After 16 years away, I'd let my connections here slide, and now it was my turn to need a lifeline. And that lifeline was Anna. After 10 years, I spoke to Anna, and she had this idea. There was a fledgling not-for-profit that she'd been working with in Melbourne. She wanted to bring that model back here to Perth. Would I be interested in helping her? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? Okay. So that not-for-profit is Narlo. 7 years later, or nearly 7 years later, we have 56 member companies across the country. And through those companies, we now reach over 300,000 people. Anna's on the board, and I now chair that organisation nationally. It is no understatement to say that that call and that connection led to me being able to rekindle my connections here in Perth, but not only that, develop connections right across the country. That call and that connection was pivotal to my career. And here's the thing, connections don't need to be always on, because I'm really crap at that notion of calling someone every 2 or 3 months, right? I really like the notion of an authentic relationship, because an authentic relationship doesn't need to be put in your diary, and an authentic relationship doesn't need and recognises that life gets in the way. So if we go back to the concept of psychosocial support for a moment, Anna and I had built a connection. There was something there, enough to keep that connection over time. Enough similarity, and we understood each other enough. We had kept that connection over time. We had now known each other over multiple career phases. What hadn't been tested at this point was whether or not that connection was a psychologically safe one.
And to test the safe space, you tend to need a tough time. And for me, the first time I asked Megan for help was 23 years ago, when I was feeling rudderless. The last time was this year. And in truth, it wasn't a problem that could be solved by a mother or a brother or even my darling husband. As I powered into 2018, my career was going gangbusters. Corner office, working directly with the CEO in an obvious position of privilege at the centre of my organisation's growth strategy. And then, the unexpected happened. I got a meeting request. We're making a few changes. My role was impacted, but of course it wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Just a reporting line change. Only it was moving me to a part of the business that I simply did not see in my future. And quite frankly, while it might have made sense to others from where I was sitting, it was career poison. That meeting was such a little thing, but it sent a huge message to me, whether intended or not, about my value, about where I saw myself and where others were willing to put me. And the result, to me, was a feeling of monumental failure. I've been totally blindsided and my confidence crumbled. My big personality suddenly very small. And try as I might to keep it together, pretty much collapsed into a puddle of tears for a few days. I remember sitting with my husband, feeling broken and desperately trying to understand what I'd done wrong. I also felt really stupid because I knew that I'd been going along with a career plan that wasn't of my making. And I'd just experienced the danger of handing control of your career over to someone else to do the planning. It took me 3 days to reach out to someone who could help me make a plan that would work for me. Asking for help from Megan involved sharing the warts and all story and laying out my feelings of failure for someone I so admired to see. Because in my eyes, whether it was correct or not, the decision to restructure my role was a reflection on me and a failure on my part. I laid it out for her. And I knew that the end of my story was going to involve resigning. But it wasn't the thought of resigning that actually scared me. It was what might happen next. Because what if I said, I'm better than that? What if I left, put myself out there to claim the role that was rightfully mine, that was part of my career plan, and it didn't come? It actually terrified me to put voice to the fear and say to her, but Megan, what if I'm not up to this? It took me 20 years to be comfortable enough with Megan to strip away my pride, break down and share my feelings of failure. And I reckon it took her a bit less than a second to start building me back up. And she was able to use evidence she'd amassed over 2 decades of knowing me. So it wasn't easy to argue with. Now, when I reflected on this talk, I realised that all the stories probably make me sound like I have plenty of examples of my career turning pear-shaped, and yes, there are a few. But none left me feeling more adrift than the place I found myself earlier this year. I actually saw a Forbes article, literally in the airport this last week, titled, "If you want to discover your purpose, look to your greatest discomfort." Well, there's probably something in that, because it wasn't a period of time that I would say, yeah, I want to do that again. But I can look back now and say the world wasn't nearly as dark as it felt to me at that time. You know, there are certainly other things that could have happened to me that may have been significantly more life-altering or challenging than the change to my job. But it really rocked me. And the reality is my job was a huge part of how I see and value myself. And that's a fact. The good news for me is I am 100% confident today that that change, that meeting, was really a gift. And it forced me to focus on what I really wanted to do. The tough times absolutely do test us. And of course, I would have gotten through it. I wouldn't have been broken forever. But I'm not really sure how quickly I would have pulled myself out if it hadn't been for the ferocity of me and support. She helped me make some clear decisions and put in place some actions to really held my feet to the fire with it. And there's a reason she was the right person to speak to about this particular challenge. She knows me. She's seen me operate in a lot of different roles. And she also had a level of objectivity that other people in my life and in my workplace weren't going to share. I'm in no way saying this is easy. Without a doubt, I still find picking up the phone and asking for help really hard. It took me 3 days to call someone I've known for 2 decades. But I also recognise it's a choice. I know how important the support that's been given to me throughout my career has been. And I know that that support has been prompted by my willingness to reach out and my openness to connect.
Yeah, so reaching out, picking up the phone is really, really hard. And asking for help is really hard. So let's just have a look at it now from my perspective, because I'm the one that was reached out to, right? So if we go back to 1995, I did not think that I was a cool kid, and I certainly didn't think that the group I was in was the cool team. I was 26. I had a job. I didn't think at that point it was even a career. I in no way thought that I was a rock star, and objectively, I'm not quite sure that I was a rock star. And I'm actually horrified when I hear Anna say that she thought I was out of her league and that I was scary. But here's the thing, everyone, I really get that, because right now there are people that I think are out of my league. There are men and women out there that I think are rock stars. I find them a bit out of my league and I find them scary, right? And in 2002, when Anna called me, I was like, sure, that's easy, because I would like to help. I had a contact. It felt great to hand out the contact that I had in Melbourne for Anna, and it's awesome that it helped her out with her career. And that's the thing that I try to remember every time that I feel nervous picking up the phone. And I've had 2 instances in the last week where that's been me, nervous to pick up the phone. And what I need to remember is is that as long as you've got some idea of a reasonable reason to call someone, most people are really happy to help, okay? Most people love being asked for their opinion. And because Anna reached out to me in 2002, my connections became her connections again, right? And in 2012, when I reached out to Anna, her connections became my connections. And we had more connections together. So you're probably sitting there going, right, awesome, thanks guys, that was a lovely speech, but I don't have an Anna, and I don't have a Megan, and I certainly don't have 25 years, yeah? So let's go back to that for a moment. Data shows best connections are probably the ones you already have. Now if you've got those connections, awesome, keep hold of them, you know, keep going with those. And if you are sitting there thinking in the audience, I don't really know if I've got those connections, start with thinking about someone that's had an impact on your career. Think about that now. Who's had an impact on your career? Have you actually rung them and told them that they've had an impact? Second thing is, they're not going to mind you contacting them. In fact, if you said this, hi, my name's Megan, and I was just calling you because I want to tell you what impact you've had on my career, right? That's a call I'd like to receive, and most people would. Because most people are really happy to help. And they really don't mind being asked for their opinion, and they love being told that they've done something good, right? And the third thing is, I think I have got 20 years left in my career. So if I've got 20 years left in my career, you guys have got at least 20 years left in your careers, and you've probably got 30, and some of you have got more than that. I could start again tomorrow with a new contact and form a relationship like this one that benefits me for the rest of my career. And so could you. So, unless you've already got one of those connections, and that is awesome, keep hold of it. Unless you've got one, then have a think about who has had an impact on your career. Who is in that connection group that you have already got? And what I want to know is, what are you going to do about it? And what I really want to know about, I want to know what are you going to do about it tomorrow? Thank you.
So we have time for some questions. I've got heaps, but I'm going to put it over to you first. It's not my job to be self-shut.
Nothing to worry, you can ask anything about it if you like.
Can you go back to that original photo?
Oh,
Right,
so just to demonstrate, yeah.
So, but where are the short shorts?
Oh, I know.
I was going to have to put them back on in order to get a photo of him. I've still got the top and the short shorts.
I'm just thinking that.
Yeah, it's pretty much, yeah.
Back in those days, so in 92, so I started at Hammersmith in 90, there was no uniform, you just wore little stubby shorts and singlets, and we'd have to check photos when we did a book that there weren't any people wearing thongs. So but back by the mid-90s there was a uniform, and the women's uniform was, I had slip-on safety shoes, because that was the women's wear.
I still had them in the manufacturing sector in the
Slip-on
2000s.
Like, they were like slip-on, like court shoes with safe things, and the worst baggy kind of like women's shorts as well.
But yeah, just to be clear on how close this relationship was, that late 90s photo when we were looking for photos of, you know, us together, admittedly I must have taken a lot more than I was actually in. When I left Hammersley and I went overseas and did my, you know, gap year thing that a lot of people do in their 20s, I had like a little folder of photos of my nearest and dearest, and that was one of my photos, right? That's how important Shane, Megan and these people were to me. She's been looking for a photo of me in her deck.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Found one.
Not all one-sided, no.
Really excited because I found that photo from the 2000.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah.
So just to kick off with a question, because I get sort of, often I speak about women in leadership and people go, yeah, but you know, there's some really mean women out there, and like, there's been women
Clearly, I was one.
Yeah, that's right.
You were not one of them. That's smart. Thank you, Vivi. Right, but you know, that I don't know, these senior women, some of them don't seem to want to share, you know, that there's this kind of preconception that women in leadership might not be the most approachable. So, NAWI, you know, this is a national organisation. You see a lot of women in male-dominated industries. Is it a thing or not?
Okay, so I'm not saying it never happens, okay, because I think men and women, there'll be some people that you approach that don't seem as sharey, carey as others. I think that's both for men and women. But having been involved in NAWI, I see overwhelmingly the opposite. I mean, I am working in a women's organisation where people choose to be there, but my involvement with WINWA here, with NAWI, says that's not the case. But I don't want to discount people's experiences of the country because everyone's experience is their experience.
I also think that lens, and I think if you reflect on that whole Anna's young, being scary scenario, I do think that lens can actually cloud how we perceive people.
Oh.
You know, so if you had asked me, I would have been like, oh yeah, no, she's super scary and just like me saying, but she absolutely had a reputation for being quite scary. And it wasn't just me, right?
I was 26.
I know. Imagine what you're like now. That's what you're like now.
Can you please
You're already getting some camera.
how scary can you be at 26?
Yeah, I'm pretty scary. Yeah.
I dressed up in Bremont. The 1990s were really shocking, weren't they? Like,
Okay, let me finish my story. All right. It's all about you. But so if you reflect back on that, my lens I was looking through was Megan was an achiever and she was scary, and so it would have been really easy to sort of project her into that. Oh, no, she's just out for herself and she's paving the way. But when you strip back that evidence, she was a 26-year-old sponsor of my career. Like, we always think of people as, I've got to find a sponsor, like, someone who's going to make the change for me. And, we think that they're going to be grey-haired people. And she was sponsoring at 26. There are certainly people that you might meet on a bad day who aren't particularly warm and effusive, but that doesn't necessarily mean, they might be having a bad day.